It is not by chance or accident, ladies and gentlemen, that Kenya is globally recognized as the home of human origins, a distinction rooted in remarkable fossil discoveries of early humans found right here in Kenya. In December last year, we marked 40 years since the discovery of the Turkana boy, the most complete early human ancestor ever recovered, 1.6 million years old. This fossil, housed at the National Museums of Kenya just a few kilometers from this United Nations complex, underscores Kenya's status as a global center of human history. Kenya also stands proud as the custodian of 8 sites inscribed on the prestigious UNESCO World Heritage Site list. I am especially pleased to note that the Gedi National Monument became the latest addition following its inscription last year. Alongside Gedi, we have the sacred Kenya and Kaya Mijikenda forests, Lamu Old Town, Fort Jesus, Thimlich Ohinga Archaeological Site, the Kenya Lake System in the Great Rift Valley, Lake Turkana National Park, and the Mount Kenya National Park and Natural Forest. Together, these extraordinary sites embody Kenya's invaluable contribution to humanity's shared heritage. This conference marks the culmination of a journey that began in 1972 with the adoption of the Convention concerning the protection of the world cultural and natural heritage. Our presence here reaffirms our shared commitment to identify, protecting, conserving, and passing on our cultural and natural heritage to future generations. This distinguished gathering has drawn global attention, bringing together heritage experts, practitioners, diplomats, policymakers, scholars, and community leaders to exchange research, experiences, and insights. I'm informed that the chair of the Kaya Council of Elders is in our midst. It has served as a dynamic platform for deep reflection in the many dimensions of heritage and authenticity and their implications for implementation and future of global normative frameworks such as the World Heritage Convention, particularly within the African context. Ladies and gentlemen, the conceptual, intellectual, and practical foundation of this conference has been shaped by key instruments of the World's Heritage Convention, including the Venice Charter in 1964, the 1976 Nairobi Recommendations on Historic Areas, the Nara Document on Authenticity that happened in 1994, and the Nara Plus 20 recommendations. This conference also is a successful culmination of historic meetings on the African continent that have advanced the development of African culture and natural heritage and informed the evolving interpretation of one very important thing, authenticity. This includes the experts meeting on African cultural landscape in Tiwi in Kenya in 1997. The Great Zimbabwe Experts Meeting on Authenticity and Integrity in an African Context in the year 2000. The 2003 ICOMOS General Assembly and Symposium. Others include the Charter for African Cultural Renaissance, adopted in Sudan in 2006, and the Africa Union's Agenda 2063, the Africa We Want, launched in Addis Ababa in 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa's cultural and heritage and natural heritage and its listed properties under the World Heritage Convention are truly breathtaking and extraordinary. They range from Kenya's historic town and archaeological site of Gedi to Angola's Mbanza Gongo, the royal court of Tiabele in Burkina Faso, the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela in Ethiopia. Yet, current heritage management approaches often fail to to align with African cultural contexts, revealing a disconnect between international frameworks and local realities. Although Africa is home to 147 World Heritage elements representing just 12% of the global total, it also has the highest number of sites listed as World Heritage in danger. These disparities expose deep-rooted systemic and conceptual inequities shaped by long-standing imbalances in how heritage is defined, whose stories are told, and which cultural values are deemed globally significant. At the heart of this challenge is the interpretation and application of the concepts of authenticity and integrity, core criteria for World Heritage inscription. Historically, developed in academic traditions outside Africa, these concepts, as codified in documents such as the 1964 Venice Charter and the 1994 Nara document, tend to prioritize material continuity and original form. Ladies and gentlemen, therein lies the problem. The assumptions often fail to reflect Africa's dynamic, spiritually infused, and living cultural landscapes. I say it is the reason why we have a small fraction of heritage sites in our continent. As emphasized through the 2025 Nairobi Conference, African heritage is plural, it's dynamic, and community-centered. In fact, its authenticity is derived from both the tangible and intangible, the movable and immovable, within places of cultural continuity, and with community custodianship at its heart. Ladies and gentlemen, this call, this conversation did not begin today. But today, we have achieved what those who came before us envisioned. We must remain dedicated and focused to pursue this path for the continent, for our heritage, for our culture, and for our contribution to the implementation of the World Heritage Convention that we are a party. Today, we launch the conference outcome document, and I congratulate each and every one of you for your dedication, your scholarship, and your visionary contribution. The outcome document reflects the depth of African perspectives and sets a forward-looking agenda for enriching the global understanding of authenticity of heritage. Excellencies, the time has come to revisit and reimagine these concepts, to strengthen their meaning and to deepen and diversify them. We must ground them in Africa's philosophical, spiritual, and cultural realities. These perspectives are consistent with the principles of the Nara document on authenticity, which affirms that judgments of authenticity must reflect cultural context. You will discover that we have living sites that, in my opinion, would form part of World Heritage. For example, in Hell's Gate, a few kilometers from here, maybe 70 kilometers from here, we have something that's inscribed as a baboon parliament, where every so often baboons come together around a site and they look like they are having a conversation. I don't know where we would place that or maybe I'll give you another example. Down at the coast of Kenya, we have a site where lions swim. It's not very natural. It's not very often. So when we say that these are living sites that are not necessarily monuments, and we think they should qualify to be heritage sites, that is why this conference is important, that we expand the meaning, we diversify authenticity to the level that captures the spiritual aspects of our continent. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, as we bring this landmark 4-day international conference on cultural heritage and authenticity in Africa to a close, I extend my very sincere gratitude to the governments of Japan and France, as well as the Africa World Heritage Fund for their generous support. I'm honored to officially receive the Nairobi Outcome Document on Heritage Authenticity. May it guide us towards a more just, a more inclusive, and a more representative global heritage future.
This conference has also highlighted UNESCO's work to prioritize Africa across its mandates, including culture, to ensure greater recognition and protection of Africa's cultural heritage as a top priority defined by the Director General Audrey Azoulay. Since then, together with our partners, the African World Heritage Fund, the advisory bodies to the World Heritage Convention, ICOMOS, ICROM, and IUCN, since 2018, 18 new sites have been inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List from the African continent, including 17 in the sub-Saharan region. And in 2023, the milestone of 100 sites was reached and surpassed thereafter, with 5 more sites inscribed last year. UNESCO also supported the continent's member states in training local experts, improving heritage legislation and regulation, and preparing nomination candidatures for more new properties to be inscribed on the World Heritage List in the years to come. We have also addressed the other representation of African World Heritage sites on the list of World Heritage in danger through the joint mobilization of local experts, national authorities, and resulting in several World Heritage sites in Africa removed from this list, and these success stories serving as examples to the world. If World Heritage is what we leave behind for future generations, we must also train the next generation of heritage custodians and guardians to protect it. UNESCO is committed to developing and supporting professional opportunities in the field of heritage for young African heritage professionals. This has been evident through UNESCO's mentorship program for African heritage professionals. Hence, Mr. President, the Nairobi Conference is not just a space for critical evaluation of our current practices on world heritage. It was a platform for homegrown proposals, intellectual and cultural affirmation. Your Excellency, Mr. President, the Nairobi outcome on heritage authenticity should be considered as the legacy of our time together for the Africa we want. For that, the concept of authenticity for world heritage must be recognized as plural. It should embrace the intangible dynamics, taking into consideration oral traditions, belief systems, knowledge practices, and living cultural expressions. And the central role of communities, not only as stakeholders, but as knowledge holders, custodians, and legitimate caretakers, must not be underestimated. traditional knowledge systems, community narratives, and spiritual associations must also nourish the understanding of this concept. And UNESCO commits today to amplifying the message from this conference at the upcoming World Heritage Committee meeting in July in Paris, for it to consider the voices and values articulated here in this land of the origin of the humanity, to nourish policies and practices of the work of the World Heritage Committee.
The Heritage and Authenticity in Africa Conference was a key turning point for the African heritage. It shall go down in the annals of history that a turning point happened on the Kenyan soil, the cradle of humankind. I'm therefore very proud that the African continent highly esteemed Kenya with this task of hosting the critical conference. Your Excellencies, the experts gathered here got a very good opportunity to discuss issues to do with safeguarding the heritage, African cultural identity, and debated the subjects that connect us. It is therefore our collective responsibility to ensure that our rich African cultural heritage is passed to the next generations. The Ministry of Gender, Arts, Culture and Heritage will pursue the issues discussed and deliberated and to actively participate in heritage preservation efforts. Your Excellency, this room holds individuals with untold knowledge on what we need in Africa to leverage heritage for sustainable development. It is my earnest appeal that this debate should not end here. Let us pursue it and ensure that the world pauses and listens to the African perspectives on heritage. Let us carry forward the discussions and commitments made here during the three-day conference in order to create a future where heritage is celebrated, respected, and valued.
I stand before you filled with gratitude and renewed conviction. Over the past days, we have not only shared knowledge, we have reclaimed our voices and our right to redefine what truly constitutes authenticity in the African context. So we leave this conference not with final answers, but with a call to action, the Nairobi outcome on heritage authenticity. It is indeed a call to all state parties to the Heritage Convention to ensure the inclusion of these redefined ways of articulating matters of authenticity in the heritage context, not only within heritage frameworks, but also ensuring the reinforcement of capacity building and resources for this implementation. So the adoption of the Nairobi outcome on heritage authenticity, Excellencies, is not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter where Africa leads its own heritage journey towards a better representation of the continent. Because let me be clear, redefinition of authenticity, it will not on its own result in an increased number of sites on the World Heritage List. As an organization with almost 20 years of experience, having invested over 20 million United States dollars in capacity building and financing of heritage, and trained almost 2,000 African professionals, we can categorically say that the great results that we have seen in our journey, it actually lied on two elements: the capacity building that we strengthen in institutions and professionals, but also the sustainable financing of our heritage.
I first would like to express my deep appreciation to you who participated actively and thoughtfully in the conference. Thanks to your precious contribution, we have arrived at a new understanding on how the concept of authenticity can be broadened and deepened. In particular, the contribution from across Africa have powerfully illustrated how authenticity is expressed and sustained through living traditions, community values, and historical continuity. I honestly welcome that the outcome document has affirmed this pluralistic and community-centered understanding of authenticity of heritage. And I hope that this new understanding will lead to enhanced and improved protection of cultural heritage worldwide. In practice, I repeat and emphasize, in practice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a major and arguably the first major bilateral collaboration by Kenya and Japan to take leadership in the area of culture to assist multilateral endeavors. Through this exercise, we have reached a new qualitative stage in our partnership, and it points to the relation's further maturity. The 2025 Osaka Expo was opened last month and will continue till October. One of the foci of the Expo is to enrich the human lives through culture. Japan and Kenya, and Japan and Africa should take this chance of Osaka to work together to give pleasure, high spirit, courage, and consolation to other people globally through the power of culture. We will also have TICAD 9 this August in Japan. It will be another opportunity for Japan and Kenya and Japan and Africa to find new ways to contribute to the world through cultural cooperation. That will be very meaningful for us and for the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude by expressing my sincere gratitude to the government of Kenya for its visionary leadership under the strong commitment and prominent guidance of President Ruto and CS Cheptumo, together with the excellent organizing work by the UNESCO World Heritage Center and also the UNESCO Nairobi office. Thank you very much.